everyone. Good afternoon. Really excited to welcome Nancy Yuen, Associate Professor and Chair of the Department of Sociology at Biola University. She's going to be talking about her fresh off the press, kind of sort of, book, Real Inequality, Hollywood Actors and Racism. And today we're going to have a real treat. She's going to talk about how she took her dissertation and basically translated it into a book, which is not always an easy task. And I'm really proud of Nancy. I had the honor of being on her dissertation committee along with Rebecca MI, and we're really excited to see this work kind of make it out into the public sphere now. So I'm sure you're going to find this very interesting, and I think it's really a testament to the work she did here as a graduate student and everything she's done since then in this area. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Nancy, who will talk to you about real inequality and how it became a book.
I want to thank Darnell and the Bunch Center and Sociology for inviting me. It's great to be back, not as a grad student anymore. I think when I saw UCLA on Dear White People, I was like, oh my gosh, that really was kind of like my experience, you know. So I'm just really glad to be here. And yeah, like Darnell said, this is my dissertation turned into a book, and I'm going to talk about how that process went, and especially in terms of how kind of it transformed, because it's not that I just transformed it into a book, but I wanted to write a book that was actually accessible to a wider audience, that wasn't just the academic audience. That was really important to me. So I'm going to get into details about how I did that, as well as get into even a little bit of the marketing that I did in order to reach a wider audience, because academic presses don't help you really with that, because they're just selling things to, I think, libraries and maybe classroom adaptations. But in terms of reaching a wider audience, I think what's really funny is that I in the last conference I went to, the Asian American Studies conference, I saw the Rutgers representative, and she told me that they had an intern for Twitter, for social media, and they brought up one of my tweets as an example of a good tweet to do, because I actually have more followers than Rutgers Press. This is to give you a sense of how the social media game of our academic presses. I mean, Stanford and NYU I can do a little bit better. But anyway, so I'm going to get into that. And also, I've talked about this so much, so feel free to interrupt me with questions. I'm not going to get freaked out. So anything that you have questions about, yeah, I feel like 9 years out of grad school now, I think, know my stuff. And I started this research back in 2000, so I really know this stuff too well. So this is, I took this photo, Rebecca was like, your picture's so good. I just took this photo. Almost everything I do that you see is DIY, right? Because we don't have, someone actually asked me, do you have a social media person running your accounts? I was like, no, it's just me. So anyway.
So you have 10 dissertation books, right? Because of school, there must you 10.
I have 10, I'm sorry.
10 dissertation books.
10?
One dissertation, 10 books.
Yes. Well, if I wrote 9 more on how it became a book, so I have a lot of wisdom. And actually, I wonder, like, I don't know if there are a lot of kind of professionalization books on how to do public kind of more academics. Anyway, so this is so we begin with the very beginning, right? With the dissertation. So the dissertation, the title, Performing Authenticity: How Hollywood Actors Negotiate Identity. I thought about the title and I thought, okay, well I thought I was actually being very clear, right? But I realized that the ideas of authenticity and negotiating identity, I think that those words are ambiguous for a reason, so that academics can imbue like our take on it, right? And the whole kind of dissertation project is to fulfill, right? Oh, this doesn't, look at that. The screen doesn't take the red line. Okay, right, so this degree, right, that's the purpose, right? I know those of you who are in grad school have heard this over and over again, but it really is because the kind of writing that you're trained to do is one that you're fulfilling not just a specific group, not just academics, but a specific group of experts in your field, right? Because they are telling you to revise, and the language that you are told to kind of write, like you're really trying to please the small group of people. And this small group of people are highly intelligent, highly scholarly, and they use a certain language that I think the general public finds confusing. You know, and I think that there's a purpose for that, right? Because I think we try to kind of create these boundaries in academia. And so looking at the dissertation, I realized that, yeah, when I finished it, I remember Minzo, who was on my committee, said, okay, you should put together a proposal and just send it out, you know, before I was even finished. I was like, okay, I'll try that. And I think only one press got back to me, and it was Vanderbilt, and they're like, okay, I'll read a couple of your chapters. And so I just sent a couple of my dissertation chapters, right? And they read it, and they're like, it's really repetitive, right? My data analysis, and I thought, well, that was how I was trained, you know, in ethnography here at UCLA. It was a very close read, so literally you're going line by line and explaining everything line by line. And he was like, this is just too repetitive. And then he said it read too much like a dissertation. And at the time, I didn't know what that meant, because all I knew was how to write a dissertation, right? That was kind of the whole point of the degree. And actually, to backtrack a little bit, I was actually a creative writing poetry graduate. I wasn't a sociology major. And so sometimes, like just recently, I looked at a poem that I wrote in my 20s, and I realized that my voice then was more clear, more powerful than even my voice now. So because I was trained to write like a social scientist, and part of the social science training, not to like boo social science, but the kind of training is that we're supposed to be objective, right? And so the kind of very strong voice is kind of antithetical to the social scientific voice that we are trained to do. So that was something that I came to realize was something that had to change in order to kind of write the book. And so this dude, Vanderbilt, he's not someone who is necessarily thinking, oh, a wide audience. He's just thinking like, can I sell this book? So even the academic book, you have to, it cannot, or at least the dissertation that I have format, it couldn't translate into even the academic book for academics, because it was just too, it was too specific, right? So you know, this is me at graduation. So I fulfilled it, and this will happen for you who are graduate students. This will happen. So this is at the hitting ceremony. So I did what I needed to do, and so when I graduated, I got a teaching job at a 4-year undergraduate teaching institution, right? So that meant I actually had a 4-4 teaching load, which is very, very different from teaching here. And so I had a lot of time, because I had to kind of adjust to the teaching schedule. I had a lot of time to think about, okay, am I going to even write this book? What am I going to do with my dissertation, right? You don't want to waste it, but am I going to mine it for articles, or am I actually going to write a book? And when I thought about the people that I interviewed, so for my dissertation, I interviewed 90 working actors, so 30 white actors, 30 Asian American, 30 African American actors. And because I felt that I was indebted to them, right? And their voices were really great, and they had something to say. And the purpose of kind of my whole study wasn't just to fulfill the dissertation, but I really cared about this project, and I cared about the people that had given their time and told their life stories to me. And so I felt like, okay, I do want to write the book, right? So it took me a long time. I graduated 2008. The book came out late 2016. So I had a lot of time to think about it. And I decided, because I was at an institution that didn't need necessarily I don't even know. I mean, this is all part of the process of figuring out what counts as good scholarship, right? And I decided that I didn't need to aspire to whatever that ambivalent standard is. I really just wanted a book that could reach the widest audience. I knew that would fulfill my promotion tenure requirements, but my first and foremost was that I wanted to reach a wider audience. So I began the manuscript, and to think about, I think, so to get to this point, I really had to think about, okay, what is my story, right? Because in order to make things compelling, like for someone to even want to pick up your book, especially I do think that social science research has an advantage in that, if you ever meet people who they know that you're a sociologist, they're like, oh, sociology was one of my favorite classes in undergrad, right? Because it's something that's relatable, right? So I think social science research has a story. Every single social science project has a story. It's a matter of thinking about what that story is. And I think that those of us who do race research and social justice research, there's even a bigger story in that, right? Because there's actually like an inherent conflict, right? So, so when we think about, so I started thinking about how am I going to frame the story? So I have a story. It's going to be about, well, actually when I even did the prospectus, my story was kind of like, well, here are these underdogs who are overcoming odds. That's kind of like a very popular Hollywood story, right? And that's how I conceptualize the actors of color. They're the underdogs. They're overcoming these enormous odds in Hollywood, and they are going to, you know, my whole story is going to be about how they survive and how they succeed. And so getting into the frame, so this is my published book table of contents, and I kind of break it down into kind of the story, how I decided to frame the story. And I was inspired by kind of the Hollywood film model, right? Because Hollywood is their whole business is selling stories, and their whole, you know, the whole business depends on it. So I thought about, okay, what are the parts of the story? And so the conflict, right? You have to have conflict. And so, and sociologists would call it the problem, right? Or the so what. And so one way to kind of translate what you've done, and this is, especially, remember I did my research starting in 2000, so this is pretty old, but then I guess racism in Hollywood, you know, just doesn't get old. It doesn't even change really, it just takes different forms. So what's really cool was that in my introduction, so it was around 2014, 2015 when I was actually finishing up the manuscript, and one of the editors that I worked with was like, well, you should start off your introduction with Oscar So White, because this is now in the public sphere a very kind of obvious understanding of the problem that I've been talking about in my book, right? But now everybody knows about it. So I was like, oh my gosh, what great timing, you know, Oscar So White, it's perfect. So I rewrote my introduction. I started off with, and then of course, actually, I started in 2015, and when 2016 was Oscar So White again, I actually had to rewrite my intro again to encompass, because what does it mean to have it happen 2 years in a row? And I thought, oh, I could do this in like, 3 days. Oh my gosh, it took me so long because I realized, oh, it actually is something completely different. But the point is that having an introduction that relates what you are doing, what your kind of academic research is, and how it can speak directly to something that people, it's a touchstone, right? Something that people can understand immediately because it is now in the wider sphere. So Oscar So White was my intro. I also did, I thought, okay, I have to do a little history, right? A little kind of brief history. And one of the editors was like, history's boring. And I was like, history's boring? That's what she said. She's like, it's too long. And I thought history is like inherently the story, but she was like, no, too much. So those were learning things about, wow, what I thought, it's like, you have to go so far, because what I thought was like, obviously that's more interesting than just statistics or something. She's like, no, you gotta shorten the history. So, but I kept as much, and it's funny because one of my readers was like, you need more history, right? So this is the whole, like, what the editor wants, and then what the academic reader wants, right? So I had to decide what do I want out of all these kind of mixed messages. So I did keep some history, but I really tried to keep it, I tried to just give it the context that I thought that, you know, the rest of my story needed. So then the statistics, right? How does that fit into conflict, right? Statistics and not just kind of your own personal conflict with statistics, but conflict with, I worked with a quantitative researcher about qualitative, but I thought, well, if you want to give the kind of context and the conflict to kind of just show how bad is racism, right? How bad is racism in Hollywood? You need kind of, you know, the breadth and depth of that, and I drew on the Bunch Center report. I also drew on the USC report. I actually was writing all the way up to 2016's report in order to incorporate the most recent, and I tried to translate it in terms of really simple graphs broken down by the people groups that I talk about. And I think that people really, actually, people who are not academics said that it was a really useful chapter and that it wasn't boring. That's all I'm going for, not boring. And so that was kind of like, they're like, no, it's useful, because this is what actually social scientists bring, right? We bring the kind of the data and the information that they can then use to say like, oh yeah, it's not just racist, it's this percentage racist, right? So that was really good. And then the colorblind racism is kind of, that was my really painting the institution, the art world of Hollywood as this producer of conflict, in that I wanted to show just how bad it was and how tricky it is. So painting Hollywood as this villain that kind of pretends to be a hero, right? So that was my attempt at it. And also, again, bringing in the sociology, right? Using colorblind racism from Bonilla Silva and really mapping it out onto Hollywood's landscape. And I don't think I actually, this is actually all three of these chapters I wrote new. These were not in my dissertation. So, and I think I needed that distance to really kind of theorize what I think of as colorblind racism in Hollywood. And I know that when Darnell read it, he was like, oh, this is good, you know, because it was something totally new and something that was, that I felt kind of scared to do. So one thing about when I was working with the press editors, they kept saying, because the dissertation, you're showing how much you know in the field, right? You're quoting all sorts of people, and you're incorporating, you're showing how your data, kind of your project, you know, speaks to them. So I was really good at quoting people, and when it came time to talking to or writing my book, they were like, "Where's your voice?" That was the question they kept. You know, what do you have to say? And I was like, I don't know what to say. All I know is how to cite people, because I've never thought of myself as the person that should be cited by others. So so this was my first chapter where I was like, okay, I am really just gonna base this on not like data, hard data that I collected, but just my thoughts about what I think is going on in Hollywood. And I think, you know, UCL is a very empirically driven program, and I think I wasn't really taught how to like theorize my own theories, but this was my my attempt, and I think that it was there was a documentary maker who interviewed me, and she really liked, because I talk about how Hollywood as a market, they use the excuse of the market, right? That it's not a black and white issue, it's a green issue, right? That's something that they talk about, so then they can separate themselves. So this is the whole villain that seems not, you know, totally progressive, like, oh, we're not racist, it's the market that's racist, right? So that was, and it was an easy way to kind of use colorblind racism there, because it is racist, but there's the action.
Did you research the market racism, target audience?
I didn't do that, no. This is based on actually what people in Hollywood told me that is the rationale of why they continue to exclude. Like the whole whitewashing controversy that happened recently, not recently, it's been ongoing, but it's now in the public consciousness, is that, oh, well, we have to cast Scarlett Johansson as this Japanese character because we need an A-list actress, right? So it's not about, you know, we don't want an Asian in there, it's we want to sell this movie, right? So then that kind of reasoning is part of kind of what I thought about in terms of colorblind racism. So yeah, so that's why I was out on a limb, because I didn't actually do audience or even like systematic interviews, but this was something that I had heard over and over again from people in the industry, as well as just reading, like every time these controversies would come up, people would, the directors or the producers would respond in that way. It was kind of over and over again uniformly. So yeah, so that's why it was kind of scary to write that chapter, right? Because someone might be like, "Where's your data?" You know, but nobody's asked me that, because again, I'm reaching a general audience. So that's why I'm kind of scared of like doing one of those author meets critics, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, someone's gonna ask me all these questions, and I'm gonna be like, well, it was just me, my musings, because I'm just trying to reach a general audience. So anyway, okay, so then the next part is character development, right? So I wanted to talk about kind of the heroes of my book, and I think it's really funny because, you know, what I'm talking about is in fact, you know, Hollywood, usually the white men are the heroes, right? And then the people of color are the sidekicks or the foils. But in my story, so I did interview 30 white actors. So in my story, the white actors are like the foils, right? Because I kind of use their experiences, because I asked them all the same questions. I was able to use their experiences to show that actors of color had very unique barriers and exclusions and stereotyping that white actors did not experience. So in these two chapters, I really got at who are the people, who are the heroes, and how severe are the barriers that they face. And then I get into Hollywood's double bind, which then is my attempt to go deeper into the character development. So looking specifically at Asian American and Latinx actors and how they kind of toggle between not being American enough for certain roles and not being ethnic enough because they don't fit the stereotypes. And here actually I started, so this is where you also, you have your data, and then you have, okay, am I going to use published interviews or publicly accessible data, right? So I started, because this is another way for me to bridge the gap between my data and then what the public knows. So because I interviewed working actors, I didn't actually talk to any celebrities, and also I promised confidentiality anyway. But I started to look into actors of color, interviews with actors of color published, right? And what I noticed and what I didn't think about when I was researching, because I thought I wanted to target working actors because I thought they were the most vulnerable to stereotyping, right? But then when I read the published interviews with celebrities, I realized that they are also vulnerable to the same kind of constraints. Like they can go from A-list to like disappear pretty much. Like think about Lucy Liu. Like I thought, well, Lucy Liu probably could have been cast in Ghost in the Shell, but I think people don't think of her as A-list anymore, right? She's still around, but she's not. But she was, she was in those Tarantino films. She was really big in the '90s and even the early 2000s, I think so. And what was that? Charlie's Angels, right? But I guess she never really carried a film on her own. So then this whole like, so what I realized is that, yeah, it was resonant in popular actors, and I included them in, actually throughout the whole book, but especially in this chapter, and people then can really connect even further because they, most of the actors don't have names, I make the names up, but then they can read, oh, well, yeah, I know Lucy Liu, I know Viola Davis, so being able to draw on popularly known things, so even if you're not doing Hollywood, maybe you're doing something that there are, things that are happening that are similar to yours that are actually publicly known, and that's a way to kind of connect to the public. So, okay, so every film there has to be a climax, right? And this is the nerdy kind of academic climax because in terms of ethnographers, we're like the agency, where the people fight back. That's the best part. That's the punching. I don't know if like everybody thought that when they read the book that this would be the climax. But to me, I think like this is the yay, actors of color aren't complete victims, and because you set up the entire kind of like, so terrible. Because I even try to, even my titles, again, poetry, I loved wordplay. So everything with Hollywoods is kind of like the structure, and then the agency starts with the verbs. So surviving and challenging Hollywood. This is where the actors of color are. This is where they, where I show how they're able to justify, to challenge, to subvert, and all the things that they are able to do in order to not be complete victims. But I mean, throughout this thing, I kind of say that like actors of color really don't have the power, and so I do say that it's really people behind the scenes that are creating the roles. But yeah, so that's the climax, and then the fancy French word, I don't speak French, denouement, the resolution, right? The kind of winding down of the story. And I think this is where this is probably my most high risk chapter, so this is also brand new. So the dissertation was pretty much this part, I think. This is the data part, right? But the denouement was, I decided that I was not going to write a chapter that was a typical academic ending, where you kind of talk to, again, it's you want to bring your work back to the field, right? You want to explain how wonderful your work is because it speaks to all these other people and you quote all these scholars. So I just don't like those kind of those conclusions myself, even though I think that's very it's part of the field. But I really wanted to do something where, because even I was actually motivated by a lot of my students because I teach racism. When I teach them that stuff, they kind of react like, okay, it's really bad, but is there something we can do? Like they get really depressed, right? Really? That's it? And so social sciences are really good about like nuancing and explaining and describing how bad society is, but we never do anything about solutions, right? Because then that kind of then goes into potential bias, or that we take a stance. And we always take a stance, right? I think we're always studying, those of us who study equality, we are taking a stance, but this is taking a stance where it's like advocacy or things that I think that Hollywood can actually do to make a difference, right? So that was kind of a little scary for me, but I think well worth it, because the feedback that I've gotten from people is that they're very thankful for that, and that that you can actually take action, that because I talk about like, so I was imagining kind of the different kinds of groups that my book might reach. So people who are maybe I've actually given talks where there's people like representatives from Congress, like not like representatives of Congress, like at the talks. So they would come up to me and they're interested. It's interesting that they're interested in kind of things about diversity. So I have solutions at the government level, right? The FCC and things like that, and at the industry level. So I've been giving books to people that I've been meeting all sorts of heads of diversity of like of various. There's actually a head of diversity of a film studio now for the first time, right? Because it used to be like it used to be television, right? Because the post 1999 thing where all the major networks set up diversity departments. So I've been giving books away. So one thing about Rutgers is that they're willing to actually send review copies to people in the industry. So every time I send them, even like I was like, Angry Asian Man wants a copy. Can you send them a copy? And they're like, sure. So they understand that the blogosphere is also important. So that's the cool thing about my book, that it reaches like the blogosphere, people, popular bloggers, as well as people in the industry. So and then I also talk about just what audience members can do. So the average person who is kind of interested and wanting to see greater representation, who just go and watch movies, that what the average audience person can do. And also, in the appendix, I give a whole list of organizations that they can literally read and finish my book and then go join an advocacy, a civil rights organization, and do something. So and this is also my thing of kind of like, well, social science research should matter. It shouldn't just be kind of like our intellectual futile exercise, or even kind of to feel good about ourselves as good liberals or good progressives, but that hopefully that young people, like I've had high schoolers read the book, which is kind of like shocking. I was like, I guess I've written it that simply. I mean, in some ways I'm like, have I written it really that? but I'm happy that high schoolers have read it, and undergraduates, because I also realized, and I think I've thought about this, but because maybe you have a topic like mine that's it's just like they're more interested in Hollywood than racism, right? I mean, most people are probably more interested in Hollywood than racism. I have a lot of trolls on Twitter that are very interested in representation, but not in terms of diversity. So it's a way to kind of get people in to kind of for undergraduates. So a lot of people have adapted it for introductory courses, because then they can read, it's so exciting, and then they learn actually about racism and institutional racism, things like all the things that we want to equip our young people with. So, okay. So after all that, right? So you want to, so you've done this book, right? So I've told a story, but if nobody knows about it, is it going to actually matter, right? So, like I said, I was a poetry undergrad, so I like wordplay. So real inequality, right? Real, like I wanted to come up with a title. So remember my dissertation title was Reforming Authenticity, Negotiating Identity, whatever that is. But I mean, this actually captures the essence of that. Just really laying it out, right? Real inequality, Hollywood actors, and racism. Just really clear, right? There's no confusion about this title. And I've had so many people actually say like, oh, like just someone actually this week. It was a journalist from NPR, not NPR, PBS NewsHour. She's like, I love your title. So I was like, thank you. And she's like, I really like wordplay. But I actually had one reader, one anonymous reader, I actually figured out who she was. She was actually associated with Bunch Center at one point. We should really talk. She actually didn't like the title. She told me she didn't like the title because it's not accurate. Because people don't use real, it's all digital. And I was like, when you get readers, they go crazy, right? I'm like, okay, and now I'm gonna dismiss this whole review because that is just like, that's ridiculous. Because I literally just had an actor who posted his reel. And he called it a reel. They still use the name. I'm like, oh, look, they still use it. Even though his daughter, they did it on it was all digital, it was all through iMovie, but they still use the word
They
reel.
still call it that.
Yeah. So I'm like, no. So anyway, so that, and then the cover, right? It has to be a cover because I was imagining it was on like Barnes & Noble, like if it's just like some dull cover, it's just not going to work, right? So originally they came up with an idea of like a spotlight with nothing there. They had they sent me all sorts of photos of spotlights. It almost looked like alien abduction. And I saw it, I was like, this is not what I want. And so I actually put it on Facebook and polled my friends. And then one of them came up with a Hollywood star, and I sent it back to Rutgers, and they were amenable, and they came up with this. And I was just like, thank God. So another thing about making it sexy was when I went back and I was close to finishing the manuscript, I thought, okay, again, the whole kind of on the bookshelf. Okay, someone just is browsing Barnes & Noble, picks it up, and says, oh, this looks like an interesting book. And then they look at the table of contents, and then they start, okay, I want to look at Hollywood's typecasting, and then they turn to the chapter, and then they read the beginning and see if it's interesting, whether or not they want to pick it up, right? And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go through every single chapter beginning and see if it's interesting. And guess what? None of them were interesting. Every single one of them was boring. I could not believe it. I was like, oh my God. So I rewrote every single one to be more narrative, so driven by story. So because I interviewed people, I was able to use stories. But even like the statistics chapter, like I would also listen to I listened to a lot of radio and watched and read a lot of articles. So I would, even if it wasn't a story that came from my research, I used a quote from Lucy Liu to start chapter 4, right? That really illustrated. So things that would immediately catch. So I started every chapter with a quote. So like I had one, like the colorblind racism. This was Mike and I were talking about this, about Nick Stevens, who I saw, who was a top CAA agent, and I saw him at a conference, and I asked him about diversity, and he was like, oh yeah, racism's so terrible. And then he's like, I'm not interested in diversity, I'm interested in brilliance. And I was like, perfect quote! So that starts the whole colorblind racism, right, chapter. So, and I was able to talk about kind of that. So, yeah, so making it sexy, that was the whole kind of the book part of it, but then also you have to kind of build up the brand of the book. Not necessarily brand of me, although that's what popular authors do though, right? They build up their own brand, right? But for me it was building up the brand of my book. So I like videos. I don't know if you know that videos, if you share a video, if you upload a video on Facebook, so not like a link to YouTube, if you upload a video on Facebook, the algorithms makes it that actually goes to the top. Like it'll go to the top of everybody's feed if you upload a video on Facebook. So this is part of the algorithm. So I thought, well, in this day and age of it's not even Vine anymore, but at least YouTube, right? That visual, like I am talking about Hollywood, there should be visuals of me. And this is actually inspired by Rutgers at the last ASA, so this was before my book came out. They did these author interviews at the conference, and they just used their little iPad, and it was really, really like low, like whatever. It's like it just looked really terrible, and but it was. I thought it was a great idea. So I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna contact someone at my university. I knew someone at my university who had worked in Hollywood as a videographer, right? Who was actually had that experience, and he does distance learning, so so online classes. So I went to him and I said, I've been thinking about making one of my classes online, and it's on race and media. And I said, but I really kind of want to do these interviews for my book. And he was like, okay, I'm not supposed to. It's okay. So they set up they have this amazing, because he's from Hollywood, they set up this amazing little studio in the basement of our library, right? And it looked so good. Like if you look at it, the colors and stuff. So let's see if I can play it. So, and I edited this together. So again, DIY, I edited this on iMovie and used the free iMovie like music. So but people, I remember when it went up on Facebook, people were like, oh my gosh, you're famous. Like people at my university were like, you're famous. And I was like, and I didn't have the heart to say like, I just made this video completely in-house. So, but just the idea of coming up on, that your video is coming up when people are opening up their social media. So.
Real Inequality is a book that is based on my research since 2000. So I've interviewed actors, about 100, and I've also observed film sets. I've even observed theater to see kind of the whole gamut of what an actor's life is like. I think actors of color are in a really unique place. They are really under this kind of very stifling system that the writing is very much putting them into this corner of a very, very small box of limiting stereotypes. And these stereotypes for actors of color, for women of color. And for them to have to want to continue to work in Hollywood and kind of escape that, they feel this very deep sense of racial burden, which the white actors I spoke to actually never talked about. Because they felt that because there's so few roles and few images, that each image is so precious.
The only thing that separates women of color from anyone else is opportunity. You cannot win an Emmy for roles that are simply not there.
So they're really poised because their knowledge of what is problematic is oftentimes deeper than that of any of the writers or the directors who are predominantly white men. And so they're used to seeing those stereotypes and they don't find them problematic because it's not personal for them. But for the actors of color who have to embody them, it is personal. It's personal not just to themselves, because it's hard to always play demeaning roles, but also to the communities that they come from and the imagined communities that are watching them, right? So what they end up doing is these kind of very subtle negotiations on the sets where they're rewriting dialogue, where they're changing costumes out, where they're sometimes refusing. Some actors actually refuse to say things like, I won't say that. I won't say that racial slur. So they're taking a stand.
And then I edited these are the quotes in the back of my book, including I think the next one is maybe done now. Oh. So yeah, so I edited that together, and it's on my social media. On my social media. Thank you, especially since I am not an expert, but I think if you're kind of communication geek, I think of myself. I think that's what I am. I really just like communicating. So geeking out on and figuring things out is not that hard. And finding the right people to help you, because we're in an era of digital media, right? Where YouTubers are. I mean, it's really hard now, but for a while, like everybody was on YouTube and people were making money, and a lot of kids of color, people of color are on YouTube. So not that I want to be a YouTuber, but it's like that culture is already understood, right? So academics can take advantage of that too, right? And I know at UCLA they have a lot of resources, much more than me going to the basement of my university library to film. That sounds like the basement of my friend's house or something. That's what it kind of felt like. But where there's a will, there's a way, right? So I also hustled for a Huffington Post. So I actually did this op-ed project. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. They have workshops actually in LA, New York. And it's actually a workshop that they teach. It's a one-day workshop, and they teach you how to write op-eds, how to write for a public audience. And they actually especially target women and people of color because we're missing from op-eds, right? And when I was there, it was actually majority of the people that were there were academics, like UCLA, UCI, like from medical school all the way to, there was a sociologist from UCI actually. So, because I realized for all of our training, we don't know how to write kind of to the general audience, right? We don't know, or we value, learning some skills and how to do that. So I hustled for Huffington Post. I really had to hustle. I could talk about it if people are interested, but it was really hard for me to get an account, even though I knew several people in my department who had accounts. But I ended up actually, I asked them and they didn't know how to help me, and I ended up just actually contacting an editor, like through Twitter, and just saying, hey, I like what you write, and I'm gonna go to Comic-Con, and and I want to write something. Can you give me an account? And they're like, okay. I mean, it took a while, and but it happened. But I didn't know this person at all, and I contacted them through Twitter, so I'm going to talk about social media a little bit. But Leanna's here, my former student who's now a sociology undergrad here. But her friend, through contact now, I'm going to be speaking at Comic-Con this summer. This is like my coup de grace in terms of popular academic meets popular, because I love Comic-Con. I think that's just it's a perfect forum, I think, for me to be able to contribute something, right, a unique from the academy to kind of a popular channel. It's called Super Asia America. It's on Sunday if you guys are going to be out there. So I basically got the account and started writing even before my book came out, right? And whenever there's something that comes up, obviously the Oscars, it was really big, so I was busy. So. And then social media. You have to do social media if you want to reach a wider audience, because all popular authors are out there, right? And I think academics, we shouldn't poo-poo this. And Facebook isn't just about your friends anymore. It's what you can do is actually create book pages, right? And on the book pages, you can actually have ads. And the ads, so one of my videos was an ad, and that's why everybody saw it. They're like, you're famous, but I actually paid for that. I made the video and I paid for the ad. This is like pulling back the curtain. It's me standing there, right? So this is what the book page looks like, and you have a shop now button, right? So it is like people can buy it from the page, And you can, I upload, I do like, it's informational. I advertise about today's event on here. And so Anthony Ocampo, if you guys know him, he has like 5,000, maybe he has 8,000 now. His Facebook game is much better than mine, so I have about 600 something more. But my Twitter game, that's my forum of choice. So for example, I ran this ad when there was a, because your press will give you an author discount. So I ran this ad and only 28 people got it, but that's pretty good, right? 28 people is pretty good for academics. Oh, and I wanted to say about about Huffington Post. Like my first article, it reached like 300 people. So I don't know if you've read the stats on academic journal articles, but the average is like 11 people that read each article. So just one Huffington Post. Like I did this to promote my book, but now I feel like I really like writing this because I can talk to a lot more people. So that's I don't know, it's a really good feeling. So to be able to reach that many people through your writing in a way that you can't access through typical, and I think part of it is because journal articles, like not everybody can pay for them or have access to them, right? So it is, again, kind of an elite. I know that there's more open access stuff that's going on, but the most elite journals are still kind of, there's a paywall that the average person can't get through. So Twitter, so I know I've talked Rebecca's ear off about why Twitter is the thing to do, because this is where I've accessed kind of the most, I've had the most communication with journalists. So journalists are people who read and write are on Twitter. So that's why it's actually perfect in terms of if you want people to know about your work, right? So so this is my personal, and I also did start a book account, but because I don't have a whole staff of social media, I really can just focus on the one. I did at one point hire an undergraduate, before the book came out, I had an undergraduate student worker who would tweet out weekly quotes from my book, like maybe a month prior to my book's release. So this is my Twitter page. So I have about 5,020 followers today, and then but my tweets like 78,000 impressions. Can you just imagine? Like I feel like in our own little isolated world in academia, like you just never reach that many people, right? And so I have. So the one reason to get an account for your book is that you can reference it easier, right? So people you don't have to say everything about it, you can just reference it and they can click on this and then there'll be more information about the book. And then I used to have a hashtag too, but then now I just use the book. But I also saw so I also researched Twitter, not for social science, but research and what are the good looking accounts, right? And one of them was like a Daily Show writer who had a book out and he got an abbreviated link. And I looked up how to do that so that you can put that on your account. And then, of course, I have my HuffPost. And then I have my personal website, which also is I work on. So because people are on different things, right? I actually have had people contact me through the website as well. So you try to really cast a really wide net in terms of the internet, right? Because people do access different things. Some people are not on Twitter, some people are on Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. But most journalists are on Twitter, so I've had lots of journalists and bloggers contact me for interview, mostly through Twitter. So, and then just to give you an example, this week I had, so I don't know any of these people. I don't know these people at all, right? And I actually have 2 people that I've met from Twitter who are here today. And so, so these are both actors. This is Amir Talahi. I had to look him up because I don't know all actors of color, but he was actually in that movie What to Expect When You're Expecting. He was the Iranian actor, if you count that gem of a film. So I remember the ad though, the 4 men with the baby carriers. That was like very memorable. Anyway, so he's one of those. So he's pretty, he's up and coming. And he just tweeted at me. I didn't even realize that we were following each other. And then he tweeted at me just got my copy. And I was like, thank you so much. And I try to also then, yeah. And then this was Megumi. She writes, reminder if you are a POC actor or thinking of acting, that Nancy's book, Real Inequalities Required Reading, class dismissed. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, right? Because I don't know them. They just feel really, I think what I realized is that my book, and this is what I dreamed of, that my book could actually speak to people in the industry and make them feel validated, right? That again, it's the whole, they're underrepresented in Hollywood, but at least in my book, they feature front and center. So I'm really grateful for this kind of, so Twitter though is, there's a bit of a learning curve, right? Because you can't just advertise. Nobody will follow you if you just advertise your book, right? So it really is about, you actually have to invest in relationships and retweeting other people and giving out good information. You have to build a brand, essentially. So this is, but what's great is that I've actually learned so much from people that I've met on Twitter. I've been schooled by young millennial activists, and there are so many people who are blogging and tweeting, and the whole Black Lives Matter happened, right? There's hashtag activism is real, right? And I've just learned so much about media and racism, like things that I thought I should be the expert in, but other people are writing, and their voices are, again, it's the whole voice thing. Their voices are so, like they could just curse. Like I still feel like I can't curse, really? I'm an academic, right? But they'll just like curse, and they'll, and then they'll be snarky. I mean, my one attempt, you saw, I did make a meme, and it was sort of snarky, but it was like, really like nice snark, So just learning snark from people. It's really refreshing, and I don't know, if you want to like, and it's also like you don't have FOMO. Do you guys know FOMO, fear of missing out? Like I get that on Facebook, like oh my gosh, my friends are having so much fun while I'm writing or whatever. But Twitter, there's no FOMO, right? People are just writing, they're just sharing information. Actually, nobody posts anything, hardly anybody, at least that I follow, posts personal stuff. It's really actually all about rants and and activism, right? Which I love, right? Because as a sociologist, kind of what I do. So that is my presentation. If you guys have any questions about any of the actual materials or any of the kind of workshop-y stuff, feel free to ask.
In your dissertation, did you observe for the last decade, actually for the last decade, some improving about the diversity of I observed because really I watch lots of movies. I'm interested in the archives. I saw some movies last decades, yes, some improving about the diversity. But for me, for my perspective, looks like artificial. They gave the role black guy or black kids or black ladies or Latino or Asian people, but looks like artificial. It's not natural. Sometimes they shouldn't. Sometimes really, because if they give like this, they shouldn't. Or I don't know. It's about scriptwriter. It's about scenario. It's about everything.
Yeah.
I'm saying. What's your
When I first wrote my book, in the kind of solution, I was like, oh, we just need more numbers, right? This is the whole what you're saying, you're seeing more. And then we're seeing more numbers of people, even behind the scenes. And one of my readers who is, I think I figured out who she is, she's a theater person actually, and a woman of color. She was like, no, it's not just numbers, right? It's not just the numbers, increasing in numbers. It has to be quality, not just quality of images, but people who know and understand exactly what you're saying behind the scenes, who are writing the roles. It can't just be like, let's get more black people on screen. It has to be like roles that are actually, this is the whole, when I think back about construction of authenticity, now that I'm back here, sociologists like to deconstruct what is real, right? But at least that it would speak not on a one-dimensional level, right? That it would capture the complexities of lived experiences, oftentimes coming from the writers.
Sweet role. They should be sweet roles, not, it shouldn't be artificial. Maybe for the background artist, you can change the numbers. You can put lots of people behind.
No, well, that's part of the problem, that people of color still tend to be in the background, right? So I'm also working on a redux of the study that I did for about Asian Americans 10 years ago, and Asian American Pacific Islanders, and we're doing a redux of like this past couple years where people were like, oh, it's a banner year for Asian Americans because they have Dr. Ken, they have Fresh Off the Boat, they have Master of None, but these are numerically more, and people feel mixed about Fresh Off the Boat and Dr. Ken, right? But it's people are saying, oh, it's a banner year because they're seeing more people, right? So then so we're gonna, our research is gonna look at, well, just because there's more regulars on TV, does it mean that they're actually on screen, as much as the other people? That's one way, right? Are they actually visible? But besides visibility, do they have relationships? Do they have, are there jobs like, do they have friendships? So those are all kind of key character development traits that actually make someone relatable, right? Because remember B.D. Wong in Law and Order SVU, that was 10 years ago, and we discovered that even though he's a forensic psychologist, which is, part of the model minority thing, but he would just come on and say okay, you are crazy, and then he would leave, and then you knew nothing about him, you knew nothing, nothing. You didn't know if he had a spouse, if he had a girlfriend, boyfriend, maybe you want, you knew nothing about him, right? So, but then the other, the main people, you knew everything, you knew too much about them, right? So then you really relate to those characters. So that was something that we found 10 years ago, and we're going to be exploring that again, whether, sure, there are more regulars on each show, but are they of the Priyanka Chopra kind, or are they of the V.D. Wong kind, right? So.
Hi, Professor Yuen. Well, thank you for writing this book, and thank you for doing the work that you do. And for this. Yeah, I mean, this is so important. So I had a question kind of about, less about methodology and more about content. I'm wondering if you could talk about the stakes of representation, especially considering, I think there's a lot of discourse in critical race theory about diversity as a neoliberal value, that, simply having the people on screen, so it doesn't address the root issue of white supremacy, which penetrates to the core, so to the form and to the structure of the literature. So in the this, how do I say? For example, Fresh Off the Boat is a new show, right? It's supposed to be the first Asian American sitcom in 30 years. Yeah, but if we really think about Fresh Off the Boat, there's a lot to unpack there, and I think an argument could be made for whether or not it's really efficaciously challenging the bounds of white supremacy, especially if we consider Eddie Chang's virulent anti-blackness and the anti-blackness that's present in the show, and Constance Wu's kind of very strange comments about blackface and yellowface. And so I'm just, and I think, so you mentioned something about agency, and I'm wondering if agentic acquisition is the end-all, be-all. One of my advisors at Williams College right in my undergrad, Dorothy Wong, wrote this book called, she's a poetry scholar, she wrote this book called Thinking in Its Form, Race, Subjectivity, and it's Stanford University Press 2 years ago, and she's really thinking about ways that we can change the form of poetry. But I wonder if, in the film industry and in Hollywood, if such a kind of, I don't know, an approach can be taken, especially where such mass amounts of capital and like you said, a much broader democratic audience is involved.
Yeah, I would say that what the actors are fighting for are not necessarily to defeat neoliberalism.
Yeah.
A lot of times what they're aiming for, I talked to one actor, Hayden, how do you say his name? Zito, you think it's Zito? S-Z-E-T-O. I don't know if you guys saw at the Edge of 17. Edge of 17? Yeah. It was a little film that actually got some play. Anyways, so he's an Asian American actor up and coming, and I talked to him, and he was he didn't like people asking him the question of, so what does it feel like to be the first Asian American sexy man on screen or something, right? He was like, why, what are you implying, that Asian American men are not sexy, or that Asian, what is the and then I was listening to him, and he was kind of distancing himself from the identity, not because I don't think he was at East West Players Gala, so, but that he just thought that the very kind of, the stereotyping, right, that he didn't want to kind of be even associated with that. So a lot of times, the kind of goals of actors of color is just to not be associated with their race because of what Hollywood has done to it, rather than kind of thinking about a more kind of, a more radical kind of approach of changing the system. It's really just about getting more jobs. So they're also thinking about, I need a job, I need, I want to be famous, right? Isn't that why most people want to be actors? And I think that when I talk to them, so the people that are in the industry don't have that idea. So what you're saying, is it even possible to kind of get out of it, because it is a mass media? But of course, in my book, I actually talk about theater and independent film, as well as on YouTube, and I think that on those forums, there are But then as YouTube becomes co-opted as well, I think that form is changing because it really is about selling stuff too now. But I think originally it was just like independent film. Like independent film has changed as well with Sundance and kind of this like the whole Birth of a Nation, right? Oh wow, you know, now they're selling really big, although that also had a problem later on for other reasons. But yeah, but the whole commercialization of all kind of media is yeah, I think the very kind of having to sell yourself or sell the product makes it really hard because they're always thinking about, this is the whole kind of what I also talk about, the audience, the middle American audience, or the audience that they think that they have to sell to. And it is the audience, whoever it be, they have this idea that the kind of culture and understanding and tastes are definitely dictated by white supremacy, right? Because that is kind of what we have had up to this point in terms of storytelling. And so, yeah, no, I think that in my study, it absolutely reaffirms that. Even the people of color who are working in it, I don't think have really gone past that, even close, actually.
What I really like about your talk is how I think a lot of us in sociology, when we read like AJS or ASR, like articles from like 30, 40 years ago, and then we read them today, we feel like it's become increasingly conventionalized, like broken down like articles into different sections. And what I think you're showing is that there is also this convention of converting, adapting the dissertation to a book. There's a narrative kind of conventional structure that, because a lot of times we might think that there's none. But I was wondering in terms of actual content, you know, what can you get away with kind of putting in the sort of book that someone's going to be more likely to pick up at an airport than a university library? And of course, we can think of a lot of things like table, like, I don't know, I think a lot of, my sense is that qualitative work is much possibly more accessible, but it'd be interesting to think for people who do quant or mixed methods, like what you can get away with in terms of tables, figures. I mean, to me, figures are pretty often intuitive, but I don't know if the broader audience, popular audience can really interpret them. And then if you have, you know, so I'm just wondering, and then in anthropology, you notice they have a lot of photographs, but we tend not to do that in sociology. So in terms of these other, if you want to have more than just words, what do you think you can get away with?
I think you should have your non-academic friends read your manuscript. You know, that's one way. I actually had, because I wasn't at a research university, I didn't have kind of a built-in like reader thing, so I ended up having two non-academic people read it, as well as an academic read it. And I think that asking people, like, you're not, I don't know, if, like, I know in grad school I pretty much only had academic friends, except people at my church maybe, but I think that, yeah, getting a perspective, because I think we don't know, because we completely lose perspective when you're in grad school, right? Because you think that this is simple, and even like explaining it to undergrads, right? So if you're teaching undergrads, that's also a way to touchstone. But I did have people actually like read it at the airport, or they say that they read it on the airplane. And that was exactly my, oh my gosh, it's airport reading. I need to advertise that, because that means it's like it's fun, right? So that's what you're asking, is it fun, right? And and I know when Leanna, she said when she read my book that she actually laughed out loud, and I was like, someone laughed out loud reading my book. That is like really rare for sociology. And it was data. It was data that she laughed at. It was data. It was a statistic that somebody in San Diego found that you're more likely to see an alien woman on screen than an Asian woman. Right? That was statistics. So if you can make statistics that interesting, right? Then that's the kind of statistics that people want to read, right? Like, think about it. People love self-help statistics, right? Aren't we obsessed with self-help statistics? So statistics that immediately resonate with our lived experience. Like, I think if a quantitative person can do that, then that is what is going to, you know, actually pass. Other questions?
Okay, so this is more about like the writing process. I know that you mentioned a little bit about like Rutgers University Press, and my question is more to do with like the process of publishing your book. So I'm a sociology PhD student, hopefully trying to navigate this process in the next year or so. And so can you talk a little bit more about like the process in which like you worked with the press and just sort of like timeline, and then also like advice that you have for students who are trying to go on the market or and get a book contract.
Definitely. So I would use your networks. So I would drop names. This is where you start to drop names. Like Minzo told me to, email you. So this is full disclosure. I didn't hear any of this when I was in grad school, and I don't think I even heard it like outside of grad school. So I actually originally I was going to go with Rutgers. I actually shopped around. So in the middle presses, you can actually do multiple simultaneous submission. But the top presses, they want you to only submit to them, right? So I was talking to Rutgers, and I think I was talking to Temple. And then I had a friend, another graduate from this program, say, you need to aim higher. So then I sent it to Stanford. And they were like, yeah, let's do it, So I was working with Stanford, and so I submitted my manuscript. Well, I was supposed to only submit 2 chapters, but then I realized when I was writing, I really just wanted to write the whole book at once. So then I decided to just submit the whole manuscript. It went through a review, right? And I got to the Stanford person because of that person who told me you should aim higher. She had published it. So I said so-and-so suggested that so then I got a meeting with them. So you should always time it right before ASA so that you can actually meet with them. And then I met with her, and we talked, and then I sent the manuscript, and we went through 2 rounds of reviews. And then they actually dropped me. So nobody ever tells you these things. I'm like, what? They can actually drop you after 2 rounds of reviews? Because that's a lot of work. And she actually was the person that told me to do the Oscar So White. She probably went over my manuscript like 3-4 times just with me. So there was so much investment. And for some reason, they just dropped me, and they didn't really tell me why. And so then I was freaking out, right? So, and all this time I'm revising, right? With all these rounds of reviews. And I basically did almost everything that they asked me to do. And then I decided to go back to Rutgers, and I had heard rumors that maybe because I had many rounds of reviews that then they might just take it as is. And I was like, oh my gosh, that would be awesome, because I was like, because this is like 2 years of your life, right, from beginning to. And so they ended up actually doing 1 more round of review, but it was with the editor-in-chief at Rutgers, and the person that was at Stanford, she was someone that only came on, I think, for a couple of years. She was the sociology editor. So I realized that there's probably politics behind the scenes that I didn't even know about, but the editor-in-chief at Rutgers really went to bat for me, and then so I had the 1 round of review, and then it was like, with these revisions, accept, right? So, but all of that was, so going back, I wrote these prospectuses. I'm at a university that people don't know the name of, so I was worried, and if they know the name of that it's a Christian university, that they might be biased against it. I was like, I am so screwed in terms of getting a press, right? So in my letter, I actually wrote that this is based on my dissertation research done at UCLA. So I put that actually as the first opening, like, dear editor, this is based on this, I'm submitting this manuscript based on research that I did at UCLA. So, when you leave UCLA, you may or may not be at an R1, and I think that, but you can draw on your network. So when Stanford dropped me, I was like, I talked to all my friends who published, right? And that was when I found out that maybe presses will take you in a faster manner. But I didn't even know about that. I had no idea what the publishing world was like. And this is like, I'm like, just trained us when we were here, but we didn't know. And it was all a learning process, but drawing on my networks. And so the day-to-day writing, though, I don't know if you want to know about that.
Yeah.
Has anyone heard of the Pomodoro work method? Okay, so so the thing is, I used it, and I was on sabbatical, so that was when I really worked on it. But you have to take the breaks. I don't know if you take the breaks. Okay, because I wasn't taking the breaks, and I would get burnt out. So after taking the breaks, and I had a writing partner that was also on sabbatical, so that was how I got through it in terms of writing, and also setting these deadlines and working really closely with your editor. So my Rutgers editor actually didn't help me hardly at all in terms of the writing, because I had already worked, I had already had 3 rounds of reviews up to that point. But this is the whole full disclosure. No one has ever told me that they got rejected from a press and then published their book. Like, I think they're very hush-hush about it, right? Because it's kind of embarrassing. But I feel like, I'm already at Bible, I'm not embarrassed about anything, So I am what I am, right? I'm happy where I am. But yeah, so this is the most important thing is that I didn't want to feel like, because I at a teaching university, that my research was just going to, be gone. So, and I wanted these stories to be told. So, but the writing and publishing process is very different when you're at a high teaching. You don't know where you're going to end up. So it's about focus and making sure that you have a system in place. So if you're already using the Pomodoro, you're probably pretty productive. And rewarding yourself, right, at the end of the day, because it's a psychological, writing is a psychological process. If you don't reward yourself, you're just gonna burn out. So you have to set kind of, that's how I wrote my dissertation, actually. I was pregnant, and I decided I would write every 2 weeks I would finish, it wasn't the plan, but it was, I would only do certain tasks and I would finish, and then I would have fun, you know? So if I was only gonna do subheadings today, then I would be done. And then the next day, and I wrote basically every chapter in 2 weeks. So that was, I also had a ticking time bomb in my stomach. I was like, I gotta get this done. So yeah, so anyway, so you know, you have life, right? Life goes on, but if you're focused and you're regimented and you have kind of a purpose for writing, like for me, it wasn't just about me getting promotion, but I really wanted these stories to actually mean something and do something in the world. And now that there's actors, you know, young actors of color coming back and telling me that they feel vindicated and affirmed, that just like, it just makes it all worthwhile.
Hey, Dr. Yuen.
How are you?
Great. Congratulations on writing the book. I'm a huge, I'm not an academic, I'm actually a filmmaker. And it's kind of like what you had said, it does cross over into that realm. And I think it's become a real strong like a tool, because I've had plenty of conversations now where I'm talking to like a friend or something, and they don't quite understand what the big deal is. And frequently something that will come up is like a friend of my boyfriend's came for a visit, and he's in the military. And he was saying that he would rather people be cast on their merit, you know, than on because this person's Latino, or because he's Latino, and, you know, or Asian. And so then I whipped out the book, kind of rolled my eyes, whipped out the book, found the chapter on meritocracy, and I read it out to him, because your writing is actually really, it's easy for me to read. I don't know, it's not, like you say, it's not super academic, so it's actually very accessible to people. It's like, oh, okay, you know. So he thought about it, you know, and so I wanted to ask you, are you surprised do you find the same, do you encounter the same thing where you're surprised that there's, I guess, I mean, I was surprised at racism. I always thought it was kind of a new thing, but actually the industry was born this way. And so, and same thing, like I think when I was maybe a decade ago, thought the same thing, like, oh, it's just I want to work out my merit. You know, it's not until very recently I was like, okay, you know, people no matter what room I walk into, they're gonna be like, oh, this is a yellow man, and he's not necessarily American, or he doesn't necessarily have the, you know, the experiences of an American. And I'm like, and I guess initially I always kind of threw that away as like something I didn't want to address. And it wasn't until very recently I'm like, you know what, actually this is the way people are gonna look at me. Let's take that, you know, and let's start to express those, you know, those images and those stories, because they matter. They're actually more important, and they're more interesting than like putting another white hero up there. So I wanted to ask you, you know, do you experience the same thing like in your church? Do people, or you're just casual everyday friends? Are they woke?
I think there's different degrees of wokeness, and it sounds like what you're experiencing is also a developmental from like being part of the system to understanding the system more, right? And maybe the timing of the book is perfect for that you're ready for it, and then you're ready to help your friend hopefully get to the next stage, right?
I think just by accident, because like initially I started directing music videos, and so most of those were with Black artists, and so it was always just inadvertent, like I was always working with minorities. It wasn't until very, like, 2015, like, oh, this is actually front and center, like, this has to be the thing. Like, for the rest of my life, the rest of my career, like, I will be employing people of color, I'll be writing with people of color, I'll be casting women and people of color, and also people of different generations. And just trying to find, instead of just pretty, you know, people in their 20s who are mostly white, mostly male, let's start to walk away from that and see, you know, and because I read your book and because I'm in the community I'm in, I'm like, everyone's kind of on the same page. But then my friend from the military comes from, you know, Boston, and he's just like, you know, has no awareness that this is kind of a thing, and so the book is really helpful. It's easy to whip it out, find the pages, you know, find the quotes, read them out loud, have a drink, you know, talk about it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's another image I'll keep for like people drinking with my book. That's although people drink with academic books for other reasons, but this is a good reason.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of double down on what you were saying. So,
Dude.
how you doing? I feel like we
Yeah,
years
I know.
ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
look back in the year, I think it was
I'm an
actually-
artist too, and
Yeah.
I'm not an academic here. And I've actually, I've talked to you before about this through like Twitter and all that stuff. But like, I just wanted to say this because it kind of is important to get your information out to the audience, right? So, as academics, I'm always reading academics books, just because like, it just kind of informs my art, the way I work, right? So, but like, yeah, people don't get it. I've been saying this for years. So when you brought this book, I'm like, yo, this is exactly what all the numbers now. I totally think like the idea that it's a good business move to cast like the same type of white guy in every movie as a hero is just a bad business move with the numbers. She talks about that and some of the stuff are numbers. And now I have proof, especially when you calculate things like culture influence, like hip hop to even like kung fu films, like all the way back to Bruce Lee. It's influencing all our stuff. To what Star Wars is influenced by the old Japanese master films and stuff. It's like you're not calculating any of that. That's influenced all the cultures, you know, to what's going on with like now with online with how K-pop's influencing the youth. You're not calculating that. You're looking at this old method, which was based off, like say, racism, which kind of like our nation is. But we can change that by like art and what we do. And what you can't know that if you looking at, oh, it's no numbers, no proof, because people think it's proof. I was like, no, art is not. It's something that hasn't even exist yet. You know, like what we do is like you're creating stuff that hasn't even exist. You got to create something new. And like then you have things like now, which I think there's kind of a renaissance with like I guess black cinema, which is still American cinema, like Get Out and like you know Hidden Figures, Moonlight, and all that stuff. But it's like it's American cinema. It's like American cinema, you know, which in the world is global cinema, you know, that kind of thing. It all connected. But thank you for the book because of that kind of stuff, you know.
I also enjoyed the presentation. Thank you so much. And sort of piggybacking off sort of the last sort of groups of questions, it's great to hear how this book has impacted non-academics. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about, you talked about having to sort of take out some of the dense theoretical stuff at the start and then totally changing the conclusion into something else. So how do you sort of, I don't want to say thin out, but take out some of that dense academic stuff while maintaining, you know, the numbers and things that impact those that you can, you know, without inner party and sort of study. So what does that process look like of making it less academic-y and dense and more accessible?
So I re-outlined, like it was, so the dissertation is done and it was actually, you know, at least 2-3 years in between. And I sat down and I thought about a whole, like, what is the story I want to tell to someone that is not in academia? So I really did think, like, I'm going to outline a book and what is the story now that I want to tell? So I started all over in terms of the structure, right? Because it was really just, yeah, what can I say with my expertise and my data that's going to reach people? So just thinking about that, you know, and just sitting down and just starting from scratch, really. I mean, you're going to use the same data, right? Because that is what you have. But then I really just, I started from scratch. I completely started from scratch. And that's why actually like 3 or 4. I mean, my book is very short though, right? Because so it was, I think my dissertation was actually probably on the short end as well. I think it was just 180 pages. So I like to say things concisely, and I think Twitter is actually a writing exercise, right? Because you have to learn how to say things in a compact way. And I've tweeted maybe now about 7,000 tweets, and every tweet that I compose it's like getting your mindset into being able to convey a lot of information in a concise and fun way, right? Because that's what's going to get retweeted. So it's like I feel like because I started Twitter about the time that I was starting my manuscript, right? So it was again finding a voice. So, but really thinking about, okay, if I were to talk to my aunt about this, right? What would I say to my aunt? Not that your aunt might be an academic. I'm the first PhD in my family, so pick any relative, right? I thought I really just I kind of did a whole new outline of that, and then your editor, you know, will actually help you, because I think that actually academic editors do start to make you kind of reach a wider audience. Maybe not as the way that I did it. I was actually surprised because I thought that the editors would be like, oh, this is too simple or something, right? I actually have had people say, I did a podcast interview with someone in England, and he said that they read the book, like his department, and some people actually critiqued it for being too easy to read. So, so that, and I know that academics, when they redo tenure reviews, they sometimes look at the size of the book, and they might say like, this is too short for tenure, right? But publishers want to sell shorter books because it's cheaper to press, and also more people are more likely to buy it, because I don't know if they want a whole like tome, you know, like imagine real inequality like this big. I don't know, they'll be like, oh, that's too much inequality that I can take, right? So, but this is like, hey, you know, this is like, look at it, it's like, you know, bite-sized version. You can literally finish it in a morning. Actually, I've had people do that. So, so I think it is reprogramming even the way that you think about writing. And I don't know, I can't say, because again, you might not get tenure on like what I just proposed. I'm not proposing a way to get tenure, or this might be your second book to reach a wide audience. Because I know a lot of people, oh, I'll go with the trade press for my second book, because then I can really. But I'm like, you know, because I'm at the university I'm at, I'm like, no, I don't even know if I have time to write a second book. So my first book's gotta count, you know, and I wanted to get to the widest audience. So, yeah. So airport reading can't do that with Facebook. Other questions?
Yeah, so this is another piece. I know that you talked a little bit about this, but with your like marketing for your book,
Yeah.
so how did to what extent did your press like support you on that, and how did you market your book? I mean, other than like this digital way.
Yeah, so the press, they're really amenable to me suggesting, you know, who to kind of send books to. And because at first I thought that they were going to be like, oh, I can only send it to 10 people or something. And sometimes they have those restrictions, but they've been really amenable. I think because they see the wider appeal. Other than that, I've had people actually criticize Rutgers, and I think because I'm their most proactive author, I just see it as my responsibility, because I just figure that from everyone I've spoken to, no one has said, oh, this academic press is really good at promotion. I've just not heard that from anyone, so I figured that is going to fall on me. So yeah, I actually, even though like I'm actually an extrovert, but I don't like networking with strangers. I had a really hard time getting all these actors to talk to me. But I did, you know, I still put myself out there. Like when I went to the East West Gala, like they asked me if I would donate some of my books for the auction, so which is great, right? So it's like win-win, right? I'm doing something good for them, and I'm getting the word out there. And actually the person that bought it was an actress who we follow each other on Twitter, and so we were able to. So this is kind of the marketing feedback loop. So I knew her from Twitter. We take a selfie. Both of us promote it on social media, and then it gets like out there again, right? So going to events, so doing the book talk. I haven't done any bookstore talks because I actually read that they're not really that useful, and it just takes a lot. I want to put my energy where I think that it will have a maximum impact. So social media has been that, because it really is where, if you can imagine like in the YouTube world, like people can just kind of blow up, right, in the digital, but people are blowing up in the blogosphere. People are just on social media, right, and the internet. So we can tap into that, and I think that actually is the most effective. Like, you know, so I've met like Daryl and Eric through Twitter, right, or through Facebook and Twitter, and through social media, being out there in the internet. So I think that actually has to be the number one. And even like my friend Anthony, I think even through the internet, he's gotten like radio and television appearances. It's through kind of marketing yourself, because everyone is on social media. That's where people are now. So that is where information is exchanged. So because the in-person, it just takes so much more energy, right, to do in-person, even flying. Like I've done talks and fly, you know, but I feel like, but I'll live tweet them. Right, so this is the whole so everywhere I go I live tweet. So I could give a whole nother talk about how to build your Twitter audience, but one of them is essentially as an academic expert, what you see when you're hearing things or when you're witnessing things, like, and what you can tweet out, it's very unique, right? Because we have our sociological lens, and so like I'll see race and racism when people are not seeing it, and when I point it out, people are like, oh my gosh, that's it, yes, right? So you can use your expertise to then, and that's part of building your brand, essentially, right? When you are, in order to sell your books, you have to build your brand. And I mean, that just sounds so neoliberal, you know. So, but I'm not I mean, I'm not gonna make any money off of this probably, right? It's building your brand in order to disseminate information. So I like to think that that's less than the overall.
Yeah, no, I have a question about that actually.
Yeah.
What do you think, do you see your theory as a sort of praxis? You know, like your text is performing the actions that you want to see happen, right? Like the act of popularizing this book, right? Making it accessible, or mediating accessibility through the circuits of capital and commerce. It feels
If I
like
could give it away for free, I would.
yeah, I know exactly. And we've seen you do that, which is
Yeah.
really interesting to me, like as a model of academic production, to sort of and with the
Well, academics don't promote. This is
Right.
the weird thing. So I think that, yeah, so I'm trying to mediate this promotion, not for capital, but promotion
Right.
for as social justice.
Right.
So it's promoting, it's not promoting, it's my pen is my social justice. It's my writing is my only kind of, not my only, but my main form of social justice. And so, but academics, like when I went to Rebecca's, book launch, and, I went to different book launches. So I went to hers, I went to one at ASA, where it was like 3 people got together. Nobody has their books there,
yeah.
right? She didn't have her books, and then I realized that academics are not supposed to sell books, and I feel very weird about, like, here's my book, $10, It's really weird for me, right? Because we are supposed to give our knowledge away for free, but then we really don't.
Right.
When I think about the scholarly journals, right? We want to publish in the top journals,
Yeah.
those are not free.
Right.
And we can't even like share that without getting in trouble.
Right.
And so I think that that there has to be, in order to reach the wider audience, you do have to kind of promote in order for them to get access to that. I do try to tell people, okay, I find out where the libraries are, WorldCat, go to your local library. And people have actually asked their local libraries to carry the book and things like that. So I'm really on top of that kind of information in case people don't want to pay. I want them to access it. And actually, when I was at Cal State Pomona last week, and one of the students wanted to buy my book, and I tried to give it like a huge discount of $15, which I thought was really cheap, but she didn't have the money, so then I felt bad, and I just gave her the book for free, right? Because she was like an undergraduate, and she was so sweet. I was like, okay, here, just take it, it's okay. So, because again, we're not making a living.
Right.
We have the luxury though, because we're not making a living off of the book sales, right? So it's not really completely fair to compare us to popular authors to if that's their living. But it is a kind of a weird space because my models are like nobody sells books
Right,
anywhere.
exactly, right. Like academic authors, they go and maybe like, a couple book, they're not like book talks, they go to universities, and like Fred Moten came a little month ago and was just like, oh, here's, I'm going to talk about my research, and this is a very, it parallels exactly what you're writing about, the kind of mass consumption that Hollywood is all about, and I think that is so interesting. Also in the structure of your book, the way that you narrate your story along kind of, or mimicking the trope of a Hollywood tale. This is a really innovative.
It's very meta.
It's cool, so thank you for that.
Thanks.
Well, I think we're all in agreement that we all want to see more people of color on the screen and their stories being told. And I know you made a couple suggestions at the end of the book about like how to be more supportive of those different television shows or movies. But I think when you get to the nitty-gritty of it, kind of like what you were saying earlier, where like if you don't necessarily like it, should should we be supportive of something? Like how do you make that distinction? Like is that something that see for me personally, I don't have to necessarily like everything. Like Fresh Off the Boat, you said, for example, I don't watch it. So I'm supportive of it. I know if I did watch it, I probably would start to feel like, I don't know. Do you have any suggestions about like how we can be more supportive of one another?
Yeah, I say like when Crazy Rich Asians comes out, everyone should go and buy Opening Weekend because there's just I don't even care if it's good or not. Like you need to go and this is one of the things that I say that you have to go and actually buy tickets Opening Weekend, right? In order for people to even think that it's worth it. Because there hasn't, so talk about like Fresh Off the Boat, it hasn't been 30 years, there hasn't been a studio-made all Asian American cast film since like Joe Love Club, right? So that was when I was a kid, right? So that was a long, long time ago. So I totally, I also have like what people who watch Fresh Off the Boat have called rep sweats, like representation sweats, like you're watching, you're like, it better be good, because if it's not good, we're not gonna have any more. So it's this, so I because I've read the book, I love the book, and I want it to be really good. So I care about it, right? I care about, but if I think about the book in terms of, if I put on my sociological lens, it's probably totally problematic, right? It's all about wealth. Actually, I suggested to one of my friends and she's like, I'm like, that's such a great book. She's like, I didn't like it. It was all about rich people. And I was like, oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. So it's like sometimes you have to turn off your critical lens to kind of take. So this is the whole. You can take pleasure. You can take a lot of cultural theorists talk about this, where they talk about taking pleasure in things that are not necessarily like the best, right? So you can still, because spectacle, right? There's like the whole medium of film is that there's something enticing about it, right? So for example, a flower drum song, right? This is a musical done, Rodgers and Hammerstein musical that was an all Asian cast. I mean, it's the worst in terms of like all the stereotypes in Chinatown, throw everything in there. But like they're singing and they're dancing and there's a romantic relationship. This is the Stuart Hall kind of like oppositional reading, right? Where you can read oppositional. You can be like, I love that like the whole like Whoopi Goldberg seeing, you know, Uhura in Star Trek and being like, oh my gosh, there's a black woman who's not a maid, right? And then she becomes motivated to become an actress, even though if you look at Uhura, the character, in her go-go boots, and it's, you know, it's what it is, right? Star Trek.
Yep.
And so there's always a problem with everything, right? There's no perfect representation, but
You know, Gene Roddenberry made up for that.
he did. How did he do that?
Because in the first season of The Next Generation, he had men in short skirts.
In order to.
Yeah, he wanted to have gender equalization, so, but they had to lose it eventually because I guess it just looked too weird. But if you look it up, you can Google it.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely ahead of his time. But do you want to say a little something about your project?
It's fire.
Say a little something about your project.
Okay, well, I'm releasing a web series. It's called San Gabriel Valley. It's an Asian American sex comedy. It's about Asian Americans getting it on. Should be going live in about 3 to 4 weeks. And it was motivated by, because there's a lack of Asian American imagery of people just being people. That was the all-consuming purpose of it. I didn't necessarily feel like it has to be good, although I hope it is. It's really just images of like, you know, Asians being sexy and being free. And I mean, actually, kind of loosely is inspired by Star Trek. Because they live in this yeah, I know.
It's a little tongue-in-cheek, for
yeah,
sure,
right.
for sure.
So,
and shocking, I think.
Yes, so I hope you all, I have cards here actually, my podcast
Yes,
is like.
yes. I told him that I couldn't promote him at my conservative Christian university because it's a sex comedy, but at least I can say something here at my alma mater.
No, but I'm hoping that in the long term, actually, that when you are like on CNN or that when you need to find supporters of people who are on the forefront to get people of color, actors of color, writers of color, older people, all genders, cisgender, whatever, that you can drop names like myself or Darnell or people or my friend Angeline or people who you feel like are kind of making themselves known through this purpose of getting people of color out there.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.